Right now, Pierre Poilievre, who wants to be Prime Minister for all Canadians, has a choice to make. Either he stands up to fight for all Canadians alongside all premiers and the federal government that are doing that, or he chooses to stand with Danielle Smith, Kevin O'Leary, and ultimately Donald Trump.
Yes, Justin Trudeau's at it again. Campaigning. I thought he was resigning. This looks like a man fighting another election. Well, when we come back, we've got a special guest on today, Chris Dacey of Dacey Media. We've often used his material. He's out there getting raw journalism and putting it up fast on social media. He's doing tremendous work. When we come back, we're going to be discussing a number of things. But join us. Stay tuned. We need a political change. But we also need to resolve to resist. Yes, please like the show now if you can, so we can beat the horrible censorship and suppression of YouTube, which we continue to be under. Talk about policy and YouTube will get you every time. But I'm really happy to have Chris Dacey on the show this morning, and we're going to be joining him right now. You know, usually I'm waiting around for my guests, and I have to keep talking until they show up. But Chris, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you on Stand on Guard today.
Yeah, it's great to be here, and nice to connect with you again. It's been a while. So.
Well, I know you're doing great work, and I just want to show a brief clip here of what you've been doing this week at the provincial courthouse in Ottawa. And of course, all of us know that provincial courthouse so well, because it's the scene of so many political persecutions, not just trials, but these are political persecutions. I've, of course, covered the Tamara Lich, Chris Barber trial very exhaustively, and I'll be back for that verdict in March. You have been covering not only that, but Pat King's trial. So I just want to show this clip here of what you guys were up to yesterday. This is John from
shocking morning here at the Ottawa courthouse as day 2 of the sentencing hearing of Convoy leader Pat King underway, with the Crown finally putting it on the record that they are asking for 10 years. And get this, the Crown said that was a restrained on their behalf, but significant request. They said they calculated 14 years, but they could have given 26 with all the charges together. It's absolutely mind-blowing what's happening right now in those walls. It's hard to believe. And the arguments being made are bad. The judge is frequently saying, the judge came out quite early into the Crown spiel this morning and said, I don't see how this is a maximum sentence scenario. And the Crown went on and on and on. And then the judge would say things like, well, to King's credit, every time he would come on a broadcast, he would say, remain peaceful, don't do violence. And then the Crown would come back and say, the absence of violence does not make it peaceful. Okay, she's like, certainly not being able to get a restful night's sleep is described as something that's not peaceful. So therefore, send them to 10 years. The Crown couldn't even take one person. All right, let me put it to you this way, folks, and this is a matter of the facts that have been found. The Crown couldn't take one person and say, Mr. King's words and actions led to this person doing that crime. That's why he was charged and convicted of counseling mischief not committed. Counseling obstruct not committed. Counseling disobey court order not committed, because the Crown couldn't say one person did what they did because of what King said or him going on social media. This is an attack on our system of justice here in this country. It is ridiculous, folks, and it is making my brain is hurting from the arguments being made in there and the jumps and the leaps in logic. Lawyers today were convicted of 3 years. He's like, this is Canada, this is not Russia. The fact that Mr. King you want him to get 10 years, saying to my friend wants him to get 10 years, is chilling. This is Canada. This would make him a political prisoner if he did get 10 years. Guys, we're looking at people who harm people in grievous ways, direct victims. Everything all right there, Chris?
Yeah.
Direct victims. and they get slaps on the wrist, they get a year or two, and the Crown has the tenacity to say this needs to be 10 years.
Yeah, well, I think he meant the gall, but this is incredible to me that anybody would even contemplate asking a judge to give Pat King 10 years of hard time for being involved in a peaceful protest. I mean, what's your assessment of this, Chris?
Not only are they saying they want 10 years, but they're of the position that that's merciful. You know, the number, like John said, 26 years was put out there. Then they said that when they did their calculations, it was 14, and they're going to be merciful and ask for 10, which is absolutely unbelievable. Of the nine charges that Pat was convicted of, I believe the most serious is probably mischief, and then the rest are all these consult to X offense not committed. These are minor things. There's never normally penalties of this sort. So to suggest that 10 years is reasonable is, well, it's not reasonable at all.
No, I don't think it comes anywhere near reasonable. And I don't know very many rapists are getting 10 years. I mean, there are people who have murdered who are not getting 10 years. And this guy who was involved in a protest. And what kills me, though, Chris, is across the street, there's literally people protesting in a much more violent, visceral way. And the police are not even arresting them. And it amazes me. We've had I'm not taking sides with the Gaza conflict. I agree that both sides should be protesting. I don't agree with violent protest whenever it occurs. I think if you want to protest what Israel's done in Gaza, great, do it. But don't occupy Parliament Hill, or don't do ridiculously anti-Semitic things, or don't do crazy things on the street. Don't block traffic. But they've done that, and they have not even been arrested for doing that. And nobody has said they should be going to jail for 10 years. I mean, do you see the incredible double standard here?
Yeah, if it wasn't for double standards, honestly, we'd have none here. And I think I'm kind of the same mind as you. I've been covering these Palestinian demonstrations here in Ottawa for well over a year, and I've seen some incredibly wild things. I've seen groups block the street. I've seen them block the streets in front of the Prime Minister's office. I've seen them surround and attack an RCMP vehicle, occupy a government building for well over an hour. Now, I've been attacked by these groups, and they definitely do not get the same treatment from law enforcement. There have been a few arrests and some minor things, but even when that happened, these large groups went en masse down to the police station and basically closed the area down and demanded the release of their comrades. And I mean, when we look at the parallels to Pat and what happened at the Freedom Convoy, they're not comparable at all. And you touched on that Palestinian thing. There was some things brought up too in the last couple of days where they were trying to the Crown was trying to draw parallels to some things that these different protests, these Palestinian demonstrators had done. For instance, targeting Jewish neighborhoods specifically, targeting Jewish synagogues. There was an incident where an individual brought a can of gasoline up to the 4th floor of a hospital. So these are specific targetings of religious groups. I mean, bringing a gas can into a hospital, that's a very, very serious thing. Nothing like this parallels in the Freedom Convoy. And they're trying to make these connections, and they're just not there, honestly. They're not even close.
Well, you know, it strikes me as there was no occupation. The left likes to call the Freedom Convoy an occupation of Ottawa. It was not an occupation of Ottawa. I heard so many people say they never felt so safe on the streets of Ottawa as when the Freedom Convoy was in town. And as for carrying gasoline, well, I remember helping people carry jerry cans of diesel fuel for their trucks, and it was for trucks, not to threaten anybody. And the differences are just so incredibly huge here. But yet, what's Pat King's demeanor? What's his attitude? Have you had a chance to talk to him? How does he feel about all this right now?
I did spend some time with him. I talked to him on the first day, and I had lunch with him on the second day. And I mean, Pat always puts on a pretty brave face. I think he was in a decent place. I think this has been such a long ride, and I mean, maybe we'll get into a bit more of what he's been through, but he has been through hell and back. I mean, he spent 150 days in incarceration. He spoke at the sentencing, at these hearings as well, which was, I mean, a very difficult and moving thing. This was, yeah. So this was at lunch, and as you can see, he's got a smile on, and he's putting on a brave face. But I mean, he does know what the Crown is asking for 10 years. This government and this justice system has already put him in jail, where he suffered terribly. He spent 150 days at OCDC, and the conditions there are terrible. And he spoke to what he went through in his statement, and it's man, it hurts even just listening to what he had to say there. So he's putting on a strong face, but I mean, it must be very, very difficult for him. The process very much is the punishment, and it's still continuing.
I was at a fundraiser for him last summer, what Tamara Lich was performing at, because they were trying to raise money for Pat, because apparently he had his bank account was frozen months and months after other people had their bank account frozen. So I don't know how he's surviving. Is he getting donations? Are people contributing?
Yeah, so I mean, the only way actually that he can survive or mount a legal defense is through donations. Part of Pat's conditions were that he can't be online. So the only reason that he's allowed to be online is specifically for fundraising purposes. That money has to go directly to his lawyer. From what I understand, I mean, the legal fees were well up over $250,000. So that's the only way he can't do his podcast. He can't earn an income. Like you said, he was debanked, which means he can't have a mortgage. He did have he was working back out west when he went back. But the last time that they breached him, he had to come back here. He was in jail, and I believe he lost his job then. So, I mean, these things make it basically impossible to work, even if you want to. It's almost impossible to survive, incurring, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of legal fees. And this doesn't only affect Pat, the seizing of his money. He mentioned in his statement that one of the hardest things and the thing that's really hurt him the most is his son. He missed his son's high school graduation from high school while he was incarcerated. And because all his money is tied up, he can't use it. It's frozen. He wasn't able to send his son to, I think it's Tokyo Engineering, some sort of university anyways. And he wasn't able to attend the graduation or pay for his son, So his son is suffering as well. It's not just Pat. There's a lot of people suffering because of this.
Yeah, there are a lot of people suffering. This is lawfare at its worst. And it amazes me there aren't more people outraged that this has been allowed to happen. And I have been watching this now since the Freedom Convoy was actually unrolling. And it boggles my mind that we've still got people on trial after this. I mean, if you look at the Tamara Lich, Chris Barber trial as another example, it's been 18 months of these people waiting for a verdict for mischief. And I always say that the mischief is something that usually occurs at a wedding party where some people get drunk and they have a little fight. That's mischief. And it usually doesn't even go to court. But here we have people who have these trumped up mischief charges that have somehow necessitated 18 months in court, going back and forth from their homes in Western Canada to Ottawa, still waiting for a verdict. I'm worried that if we get a Pat King verdict, and I think it's scheduled for February now, if that is anywhere near 10 years, and I hope and pray he gets the minimum, some kind of probation, if even that is necessary. And I don't think he should have gotten that much, but the judge will obviously be doing something. But I hope that sentencing and his guilty verdict doesn't affect Tamara Lich and Chris Barber as well, because that trial, and you've watched it from day one as well, has been completely mismanaged by the prosecution, the Crown. It was a joke. It was a kangaroo court. It was a gong show prosecution where they didn't even know at times the evidence they were presenting. They had obviously not even viewed it. They would show evidence and say, "Oh, sorry, wrong tape. Well, that's not the one we wanted." And I'm saying most of what they showed actually reinforced the defense's case. And I was sitting there day after day saying, who is running this incompetent prosecution? It's incredible to me. But in the world we live in, as badly as that case was run, as managed, and I think the judge has been fairly objective and fair throughout the whole process. I'm concerned that this might have a negative impact on their trial as well. Do you think that's possible?
I think, yeah, for sure it could have an impact. These trials have taken so long, so there isn't a lot of case law on the books yet. I mean, there's been some cases with a lot of withdrawals. There's been a few convictions, but they're mainly people who were at the Freedom Convoy protest. They weren't people that have been kind of singled out as leaders or organizers. So when it comes to like the Tamara and Chris case, they've been singled out as organizers. Pat is perhaps an organizer and a leader. The only case really that has been settled recently was the three men out in Alberta recently from Coots that were recently sentenced. So like the most relevant thing there would be Marco van Hugenbos. He was, they said he was one of the leaders. He acted in a leadership capacity out at the Coots protest. And he was recently convicted of mischief and sentenced to 140 days. So that's perhaps something that could give an idea. It's interesting that the Crown, during their arguments, were making all kinds of parallels and trying to make comparisons to crimes like intimidation, even sedition. But when it came time to the defense and pointing out this case of Mr. Hugenbos, to say then all of a sudden the Crown doesn't want parallels drawn. Well, this case is nothing like it. In fact, the Crown said that Hugenbos wasn't even a leader, and this caused quite a bit of commotion in the courthouse because Ms. Calvino addressed that in her defense, and she actually presented some documents, put them on the record that said, like, in the decision that Mr. Hugenbos was a leader, and this caused quite a stir. There was a back and forth. There was honestly there was so much drama in that courtroom. It was wild. It's something I can't even really. I'm still kind of wrapping my head around the last 2 days, to be honest.
Yeah, I saw a report yesterday. I can't remember what media outlet it was, but they said Pat King apologized for his role in the Freedom Convoy. Did he actually apologize?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he did express remorse. Stating that he didn't come to Ottawa no one came to Ottawa to hurt anyone or to intimidate anyone or anything of that nature. And if there was, people that were hurt, he is sorry for that. That was never his intention. But it wasn't. In fact, I think it's the pre-sentence report they call it. They did say that Pat was remorseful, but they kind of make a point that he wasn't remorseful enough. I'm not really sure how they judge these things, right? Like, you can be sorry that some things happen and still believe in what you were doing is right. There's different things that could be happening there. So I wouldn't put too much stock in just, the little headline that someone grabs out of something personally.
Yeah, and I understand how he has to essentially play a bit of a game here at the end because his neck is on the line, and there's very little he can do except just to present the facts. But I don't think a peaceful political protester should have to apologize because they oppose the mandates. And that, of course, is how it's going to be construed by much of the mainstream media, that, Pat King is sorry that he protested. Pat King is sorry that he opposed the mandates. And I can tell you, most Canadians are not sorry Pat King stood up for truth, or that Tamara and Chris stood up for justice against these mandates. I have lost a sister because of the COVID vaccine. I have another member of my family who's suffering from cancer, we believe, as a result of that COVID vaccine. I don't know what the effects have been on me yet. I'm thankful I'm in good health and I exercise every day, but I don't know. But thank God we had people who were prepared to put their reputations, their lives, their careers, everything on the line to fight these mandates, because as soon as this Freedom Convoy unrolled and Trudeau looked like an authoritarian idiot with the Emergencies Act, they won. And we won this thing. Trudeau began to backtrack from the day those people went out on the streets and protested. We owe them a great debt. And I say that every time I talk to Tamara or Chris. I owe you a debt for what you did, because I was out there reporting on it. I was out there getting frostbite, but I didn't put my job on the line. I didn't put anything else on the line. I was just there watching, reporting, and telling people that what is going on here is historic. But to get back to Pat, it's unfortunate that he has to look like he's remorseful for being part of a peaceful protest. But I understand what's going on there. Just want to turn briefly, if we could. There was talk on social media recently of a Freedom Convoy 2.0. And as soon as I saw that, I thought this could lead to an Emergencies Act 2.0 because Trudeau is just very trigger happy. I know you're very close to all this, and I know you're planning a much smaller reunion. We'll get to that in a sec. But was this ever a serious proposal to have like a nationwide Freedom Convoy 2.0 in January, February?
I don't think so. I mean, honestly, what I saw of it was all online. A lot of it was coming from people that I wasn't really closely connected with, but I followed it, and I think the person that kind of got it rolling probably had good intentions, and these things kind of can really go viral online, right? You don't really know, but I don't think that there was actually much real world connection to it, and in fact, since there was also a lot of concerns, right? With this trial coming up, Pat King is literally waiting for his sentencing. Tamara and Chris still waiting to be sentenced. One of the things that the prosecution brings up in these things is that they need deterrence. Deterrence, and there's one other word here I want to get right. Denunciation, right? So they need to make sure and set an example so that exactly what, say Convoy 2.0 in their words doesn't happen again. And the timing of this, it was unfortunate, just given everything going on. Everything going on with our government is in kind of a panic mode, and so it probably wasn't the greatest time. I don't think it was ever really turned into something really organized more than online. People get excited, and we're all looking for hope. And I'm by no means trying to discourage people from standing up and doing what they think is right. We just have to think about how we do it and make sure we do it the right way.
Well, I think we're going to get an earlier election, one way or the other, whether or not the prorogation is declared unconstitutional. It's a good possibility. I had a guy on this week talking about that. The Justice Foundation for Constitutional Freedoms is fighting that right now. They've done some great work. That's a possibility, but I don't think this government, whether it's led by Trudeau or whether it's not led by Trudeau, is going to survive much longer. I mean, God hope. But I showed a clip at the very beginning, and I just want your take on this, because I'm one of the few people who really doubts that Justin Trudeau is actually out the door. I continue to say there's a plan here. He's up to something. He's looking far too happy. Mark Carney is already imploding. His opening day was a disaster. Even the liberal media said, the guy is really quite boring, and he ran away from the media, kicked 3 media out of the news conference to begin with, but then didn't want to talk to even friendly media afterwards. The guy really
he used 2 pirated logos as well, I think, so far.
Yeah, that's right. He's ripped off a logo, and it almost looks like he's been set up for failure. And Chrystia Freeland is probably one of the most unpopular cabinet ministers in the Trudeau government. I mean, there's very few people who can tell you, I really like Chrystia. She's just got that something. she's a horrible personality. She is so dismissive. She is just so arrogant, supercilious, and just can't stand your average person. I don't know anybody who really has a warm spot for Chrystia Freeland. And to boot, I mean, she comes across as totally incompetent now. She's run the economy into the ground. So this is the choice. We've got Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland. And don't talk to me about Karina Gould, who wanted to pretend Yaroslav Hunka never happened. We'll just make that disappear. That's Karina Gould. So we've got 2 people. Neither of them really have much popularity. I still think Justin Trudeau could come back, because the party said, please come back, Justin. We need you to fight this next election. His father did the same trick in 1979. People forget that entirely. He resigned twice. Pierre Trudeau resigned twice. The first time was really a bit of a joke, and they brought him back for the 1980 election against Joe Clark. I'm not betting on this, but I can see Justin Trudeau coming back, the party drafting him back, because there's not real support for either of these two. The polls are not going up at all. In fact, they've gone down. The last one I looked at this morning, I would say the most positive conservative polling is done by Compass, or not Compass. I'm trying to. Anyway, I can't think of the name right now, but if you even the liberal pollsters, the ones that tend to ask the question in a way that will get the left wing or the liberal response desired, are saying that the liberals continue to drop even after Trudeau's gone. So he looks like he's campaigning, though. He's out there and he's saying, it's me or Pierre Poilievre who's in Donald Trump's pocket. It's me or it's Daniel Smith who's in Donald Trump's pocket. I just find this, he's way too much in a campaign mode for somebody who's apparently retiring in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, when this initially happened, and there was a few people maybe that were thinking along your lines, I honestly was not really thinking that. Like, maybe I got caught up in the excitement, but very quickly I started to question my initial thoughts. I mean, I posted that video of his stop yesterday. I mean, it looked like a giant campaign stop. He's done at least one more of these before, and actually now, having listened to you there, like if you didn't know better, you would swear that Carney was trying to tank this thing. I mean, Freeland is such a terrible choice. I don't know if you saw that red picture of her that she's come out with now. Yeah, this stuff is so bizarre. And I wouldn't put anything past Trudeau, right? Like, maybe they're just they're doing such a bad job. They'll come in and say, "Well, you need me," just like you say. I wouldn't put anything past them, honestly, at this point.
Yeah. No,
scary. Honestly, it's scary to think about it a little bit because we're already delayed. We're prorogued right now. If the law can intervene and we can get that declared unconstitutional, great. But I mean, if not, we could be in for a little while longer. And I mean, not to mention the talk of wanting to extend the election 5 years, right? So I believe under our Constitution there can be up to 5 years between elections. In the Election Act it says 4, but the Constitution may be hard to change. But the Election Act can be changed with a bill. So if they put a bill in to change that date out to 5 years, would put us to October 2026. All they need to do is pass that bill. So unless we can get Jagmeet Singh and the NDP, who have not shown they're really willing to follow through and bring down this government, then we may be, we could be in big trouble.
Yeah, well, you just told me exactly what I heard this week from James Manson of the Justice Center, because I asked him that very question. I said, can they hold on for 5 years? And he said, well, it's really a battle between the Constitution, which still says 5, and legislation that says 4. So I said, well, can they change that? And he said, yeah, they would have to repeal that legislation. Well, it sounds difficult, but not, as you said, not really. Not if we get Jagmeet Singh in line, and they could do it again. Yeah, so it's possible. I think it might destroy the NDP entirely if they did that. But who knows what's going to? It's a danger, and I think that's we really have to be wary of all the possibilities right now. Now, I wanted to talk about the work you do writ large. We often, I know your material is used all over the place, and you're getting material that the mainstream media really doesn't get. When Elon Musk declared that you are the journalist, the citizen journalist, you are the journalist now, after the election of Donald Trump, did you hear that? Did you receive that as not vindication? Nobody has to vindicate what you're doing, but a affirmation of the work you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I am, I suppose. And thanks to platforms like X is how, I mean, a lot of my things have really been able to get out there to the greater population. And this really is the case. In Ottawa, particularly, mainstream media covers nothing here except a very few things that they're told to cover. There's a huge vacuum. There's little to no coverage of anything here. And there's many events that if I wasn't covering, they would not have gotten out. At least wouldn't have gotten out to a larger audience. And I believe this is the case in many places. So now we have people with cameras. We have the ability to share and connect and network to people like you and many others. This is the future. And as governments change, and perhaps as funding for certain entities here disappears, there's going to be a lot more room and a lot more opportunity for people like myself and others to come in and fill a role and maybe probably do a much better job than what people are used to.
So I understand at the Pat King trial, they've had like people come forth and say that because of the protest, I felt threatened, I felt victimized, I lost sleep, and they're actually reading. Yeah, I think they're officially called victim impact statements. Are they reading statements like that?
Yeah, so there are victim impact statements, and these are yeah, exactly. So they'll bring someone in this. There one particular instance in this, there was a woman's shelter. We're deciding not to name. We don't want to bring any negative attention on things. But there's a woman's shelter where there was a woman who was alleged to have had a mental health episode of some sort. That there was honking, people were scared, these sorts of things. So this is introduced via a witness impact statement. But what it's really doing is attempting to enter into evidence stuff that hasn't been proven. Right? Pat was found not guilty of intimidation, of those more serious charges. The things he was charged with were consult to X offense not committed, right? So none of this is proven. None of this has reached the threshold. And the other thing is that for every statement that they do like that, I'm sure I could walk out into the streets of Ottawa here and find 10, 50, 100 people who would have a very different experience.
Well, yeah,
very
yeah. Well, when I heard that, I remembered interviewing a woman on the streets, on Wellington Street, actually. I remember exactly where it was, right near the Chateau Laurier, in February during the Freedom Convoy, very, very cold night. And she was telling us how the Freedom Convoy made her feel safer. And I thought it was worth showing this again.
And carrying through this entire process.
Yeah.
Every person who's been here has been nothing but polite. I've walked these streets by myself.
Yeah.
A woman by herself.
Yeah.
Completely fine.
Yeah.
Not threatened, not shaken, not anything. More scared walking on a Saturday night downtown Ottawa in the summer than I am here now with these truckers, quote unquote, convoy. Way safer with everybody watching you than you ever have downtown without people watching you. So yeah, that needs to be known. Like, Canada needs to know Ottawa's a great city, but it's not stain free, like, at all. You guys are not staining the city. And anytime anybody tells you this isn't your city, please remind them it's your country. It doesn't matter what city you're in, it's your country. Sorry.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm really frustrated. Tired of people telling people Ottawa is not their town, it's not their city, get out. It's your country.
Yeah.
The country is not divided among cities and where you live and where your taxes go that matter. You're a citizen of this country. So yes, welcome to your city.
Yeah, I remember that interview so well, and it strikes me we never really had a chance, or the Freedom Convoy people never really had a chance to bring those impact statements forth. And certainly during the whole Tamara Lich, Chris Barber trial, there was none of that was read into the record. Yeah, it was all the prosecution suggesting. And I remember some of these witnesses that they presented, people who were very affluent, who owned stores, and they said they were just totally outraged to smell exhaust fumes, exhaust fumes, and weed in the market. And I thought, how long have you lived and worked in the market, ma'am? And suddenly it was just intolerable. You couldn't work there. And all of these Freedom Convoy people were just threatening. Did they actually threaten you? No, but I thought they would. And it occurred to me at the time, I said, it's like a thought crime. It's like people imagine things. It's like they projected their own fear onto these people. And I hung out on the streets during the entire period. I might have missed one night during it. I found it one of the most exhilarating times of my life. It's very strange because I hate winter. I hate February the most. This was not a constituency I ever really understood. I come from a military background, but I was so inspired by these truckers. I was so inspired by everybody. And I realized that something was on fire here. The country was on fire and there was change. And I was against the mandates, but I really didn't know how to fight them. And I said, these people are doing it effectively. So I hope this Pat King trial ends on a positive note for Pat. And we're going to put information in the description to say, if you want to donate to Pat's cause, and this is a cause, here's how to do so he can pay his lawyer. The legal bills, as you said, Chris, are phenomenal. Anyone who's ever done any sort of legal action knows how much this costs. And Pat King is not a wealthy man. None of these people have been wealthy. And you know what I think as well, Chris? We've missed so much of this because I have been totally focused on Tamara and Chris. I can't be focused on everything. I'm trying to cover the national news for a variety of organizations. So I've been very focused on that, but I've missed so much because there's been so many people who have been dragged before this provincial court, found guilty and charged, or found guilty and sentenced, and it's barely made a mention in the media. So I thank you for covering a lot of that material for these men and women who have been hauled up in front of that courtroom, accused of horrible things, and often getting sentences that are just way beyond any sort of description of the alleged crime. Because if you didn't do it, nobody else would. And once in Pat King as well, he's not been as well covered as Chris and Tamara. And there's been a lot of people who said, well, Pat said silly things on the internet, and that's, for me, is not the point. It's what his actions were during the Freedom Convoy, and the fact that he has become a political person. But yeah, and I wanted to mention this as well, because I think this is something you realize, and so many people who I've talked to over even my own media, the Post Millennial, which is based out of Washington and New York, I have to explain this to them every time, that it's not Trudeau putting these people on trial. These are Trudeau's political opponents. Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act, yes. But this is a provincial courtroom. This is technically Doug Ford, good old Doug Ford, the conservative, who I call the phony conservative, who's in Justin Trudeau's pocket. Every time Justin Trudeau wants him, Doug Ford is there. Doug Ford jumps in Trudeau's pocket. He's doing it again right now over the Trump tariffs, and he is totally screwing around with Alberta and Danielle Smith. But Doug Ford will always be there for Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party when it comes down to it. And that's who is ultimately responsible for this, the provincial courthouse. So, and that's where they're being tried.
Yeah, Doug Ford is certainly no conservative. And I mean, I don't think he's got much of a spine at all. He was wearing that hat that says Canada's not for sale. And the only thing I think, yeah, but you'll sell the green belt to all your buddies, or, it's wild. Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, Canada's not for sale. There's so many jokes that Canada's not for sale. It was bought a long time ago. It's owned by the left. Just insert joke, man. It's I laugh, but it's terrible.
Anyway, I don't want to take up any more of your time, and I try to keep the show under 45 minutes because people tune out otherwise, I find. But it's been so nice to have you here. I support your work in any way I can, and love the video you're doing, because nobody else is getting a lot of that video and doing the work. And you're out there in all seasons, including right now. Funny to see that courthouse surrounded by ice and snow, because I'm usually used to it in the summer when I've been there. And it's so great you're out there doing this work. So all I can do is encourage you as somebody who started out as a mainstream journalist, I actually, believe it or not, I actually worked for CBC as a columnist, as a sort of a token small c conservative. But I've worked now exclusively for the new media and increasingly for independent media, because I'm just fed up with the mainstream media's lack of interest in real things and real people, because they are so in the pocket of this Trudeau government and so in the pocket of the woke crowd that's where they think the future is. The future has passed them by. You are the future, Chris. What you're doing, you are the future. And that's what Elon Musk was saying. And I don't know how many times I've heard people talk about that as being a declaration of independence for media. So all I can say is encourage you to keep up the good work, and anything I can do to encourage you to that end, I will continue to do. But thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll have you on the show again anytime you want to. But it's been a pleasure.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. It means a lot coming from you too. And yeah, I'm happy to reconnect again soon. That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chris. And we'll, like I say, we will be back in touch as soon as possible. I'm just going to sign you out here. There. Thank you. Yes, that was Chris Dacey. Wonderful, wonderful example of independent journalism. Just wanted to add one more thing before I left here. Watch this show tonight, special report. This is really, really going to be worth watching. This is hosted by my friend Jim Ferguson. He's out of the UK. We're going to have Viva Fry on tonight. I'll be on for an hour and just some special guests. We're going to be talking about Trump tariffs and what it means for you and I, what it means for politics and everything else. So please tune in tonight at 8 o'clock. The information is there. We'll have it in the description as well. Thank you for watching today. I want to especially thank everybody. And by the way, I didn't put on the merchandise, but we've got these bumper stickers. Don't miss these. These are, I'm sure I got them on the screen here. These are the best thing I think we've done in a long time. $10. Go to our store, go to the merchandise, have a look, and these are fantastic. Thanks for watching today, folks. Be back again tomorrow with all the news you need to know. Let's continue to resolve to resist.